The image on the left is a photograph of my setup within the lighting tent. The image on the right is a photograph of the finished painting. This is a detail of the finished painting featuring the finished version of the vase. For the purposes of this video, I'm referring to this object as a vase. The truth is, it's actually meant to be a pitcher, but I'm using it in this painting as a vase for these stems. Working on a 24 by 18 inch panel, I began my work with a drawing using a water-soluble pencil. I then washed some color over both the berries and the leaves and stems in order to help me not lose them with my application of the first glaze. This is a photograph of my work at the end of today's video. You might notice that some of the leaves have been painted white at this point. I did that once again so I could start fresh on the leaves. You won't see that in today's video. I do want you to notice the first glaze that I applied before starting today's work. It's a simple brown glaze, and I've indicated some of the direction of the wood grain on the table, and I have begun to put texture into the eventual background. For today's palette, I used a mixture of raw umber with just a little bit of lamp black in order to create a very dark but rather warm neutral color. Even though the vase is actually pewter, I wanted to go with more of a warm silver color. I used this dark neutral color as my number 10 value. It's the darkest dark in this painting, and it's very close to being actual black. By adding white, I mixed a range of 10 values. I may have actually been working with 9, I don't actually remember, but if you figure white itself is one of the values, you wind up with 10 values. Anything close to that would certainly get you through today's need. On today's painting, you might notice that I don't go all the way to white, which will be the highlights, and I also don't go all the way to black, which will be eventually in the painting. The first thing I did was to wipe off the wet glaze. If you'll notice inside the fish mouth, I started to apply opaque color, and I realized it was just too wet. So I used a t-shirt rag to wipe off that wet glaze in order to make the application of opaque color easier. The images that you're seeing have been speeded up a lot. You're probably looking at 4 to 6 times the speed of life. Additionally, I have cut the images that show me reaching across your view in order to get to my palette and load the brush. As you watch, try to notice which value I'm working with at that moment. I try, as long as there's a certain value on my brush, to work in all of the areas that share that value in common. Notice also that I'm doing little or no blending on today's layer of paint. It's also worth paying attention to the fact that I'm using a small filbert brush, probably a number 4 or maybe a number 6 filbert. It's a new brush, so it has a nice, sharp, clean edge to it. Normally we're told to use the largest brush that we can use. Most of the time I don't. I like working in detail. I'm also holding the brush more like a pencil than what you would normally think of the way that you would hold a brush. I just like holding it this way. In my opinion, it's whatever works for you. That's what you ought to do. Using this small brush and holding it the way I do, I feel as if I have just greater control over the flow of paint onto the surface of this panel. Notice my use of a maul stick. I find this incredibly important when working on small areas. What you will see in this video is really the first underpainting for my fish vase. At the end of this video, you'll see that I'm about half done with the fish. What you're seeing on this video is the first underpainting of the fish. I worked several more days on the entire painting and, indeed, on the fish. What you don't see in this video is that every time I'm changing values, I stop and use a paper towel to wipe my brush out. If I didn't do this, my values would just eventually all blend together and I'd be working with one kind of mushy looking value. Okay, I'm going to be quiet now and let you just enjoy watching the high-speed painting.
That's why I picked you. It seems a terrible waste, but you're the best that I could do. I was a dutiful daughter, I was an innocent lamb. You led me on to the slaughter, and now I'm just a ham. What are you doing to me? You'll be the ruin of me. I care for you in a great big way. You smiled at me and I fell. It's wild, it's silly, it's swell. I'm like a leaping gazelle today. I knew the minute I met you that I'd get a load of romance. I'd stop at nothing to get you. If there's a possible chance, I'd give a year of my life to hear you say I care for you in a great big way. What are you doing to me? You'll be the ruin of me. I care for you in a great big way. You smiled at me and I fell. It's wild, it's silly, it's swell. I'm like a leaping gazelle today. Oh, I knew the minute I met you, I'd get a load of romance. I'd stop at nothing to get you. If there's a possible chance, I'd give a year of my life to hear you say, I care for you in a great big way.
At the end of today's work, the great majority of the surface of this fish has been painted. There are just a few areas where the tone of the original panel shows through. The next day, I started laying in the underpainting for the tabletop and completed the white underpainting on the leaves. As the painting progressed, I still had not touched the fish again. The next day, I went even further with the rest of the painting. Notice the fish stays the same. Now you see in the 5th day of painting that I'm continuing work on the fish. The lights get lighter and the darks get darker. Toward the end, I added the absolute highest highlights. I also added the reflected colors from the tabletop and the berries. I think it really perks up the finished painting. Here is the finished painting. I hope you enjoyed watching my video.